Project for today is a 98 Sportsman 500. It's already been torn apart by the previous owner a little bit here. Had a sheared flywheel key. Looks like he already took the key out of it. And the flywheel is pretty well junk. Put a used one on there and see if we can get it going. I'm finally getting back to working on this Sportsman. I got a used flywheel for it. The other one, the inside was scarred from the key breaking and spinning on the shaft, so this one is in a lot better shape. Let me show you how to take the side panels off here. They can be a little bit tricky for people to get off. Take the seat off first. And usually you just want to bend here, give it a pull like that, and then this will pull down here like that and pull back. You gotta be kind of forceful. It feels like you're gonna break it, but that's the only way I've found that they come off anyway. I'll take a Dremel with a little wire wheel on there, and I'll clean up the crankshaft a little bit. That got some rust on it from it sitting outside, and we'll start putting this back together. Looks pretty decent. There's a little bit of metal transfer here on the crank that I might try to clean up a little bit more with some emery cloth or something. I wouldn't really recommend doing this, but this four-wheeler's junk other than being able to clean up this crank, because it's not worth putting a whole new crankshaft in and everything, being that it's older. So, and this isn't for a customer, it's just for me to play around with or let one of my family members ride it on the trails and stuff. So we'll see what happens. One thing to note here is the starter Bendix. When you have these apart, just make sure you give it a spin and let go of it. Make sure it goes back nice, because these have problems with the Bendix sticking, and then you got to still pull the flywheel and everything to get them out of there anyway. And make sure you put it in there before you put the flywheel on, otherwise you end up pulling the flywheel back off to weasel it out of there. Some of them I've been able to get them out, but it's usually not worth the hassle. So we'll slide the replacement flywheel on here. My key popped up. Now, from what I found online, it says to torque the flywheel bolt to 65 foot-pounds, so we're going to do that, but I would do your own research and in the manual see what it says you should torque it to. So I put a couple of bolts here. I guess I only needed one, but to wedge a pry bar in here so I can keep it from spinning. And we're going to torque it down. you go. Now we'll continue putting it together. I just washed up the recoil here. I'll put that on. I got to dig through a bag of parts that I got with it to find all the bolts. Hopefully they're all here. I don't like getting machines that have already been tore apart. You never know what's missing. Bottom ones here can be a little bit tricky to get at. Have to get an extension for that one. I'm not really tightening it. I do that by hand. I'm just running them in with the impact, so I'll grab a T-handle and tighten them with that. This recoil is broke down in there, as you can see. I'll probably have to try to repair that somehow if we get it running. I'm just trying to slap everything back together here, so see if it runs. And then if it does, we'll go from there. I didn't put new gaskets in or anything up here. I'm just going to reuse the old gasket. I just want to make sure that something else didn't make that key break like that. Sometimes if you're riding really fast and slam on the brakes really hard, the clutches are still engaged, so it'll try to stop the engine so fast that it'll shear the flywheel key, but it's not super common on four-wheelers like this. So I'm just still worried there's something wrong in the valve train or something like that. So we'll go from there and see if we can get this thing fired up. I'll do the cover up here. I already cleaned that up a little bit. And I'm just going to throw this linkage piece up here for now. I'm not going to tighten it down in case we got to take anything back apart. Just so it doesn't rattle around here. I still have to put a spark plug in it. That was out of it too. I've got one of these magnetic spark plug sockets. This one's a 16 millimeter, but I highly recommend these for spark plugs like this that you can't really see what you're doing, and once it is loose you pull it up out of there, it stays in the socket nice. Grab a extension for that. Grab the spark plug wire, put back up in here. It doesn't seem like it wants to. Oh, there it clicked down, huh? Let's see if we got any juice in the battery that was in here. Oh, there's a little bit. Hit the starter and wow, it actually still has juice in it. This has been sitting for about a year outside, so that's kind of surprising. Can't really tell. There's a tiny bit of fuel in there. Should be enough if we put it on reserve. I'll check the oil. It's low, but it does have oil in it, so I just want to test it for a second. We'll shut it off and probably drain the oil, do an oil change if it runs okay. It's still not kicking off. You could hear something in the air cleaner. It's just that it wasn't connected all the way. I'll try it a little bit more. Try giving it a little throttle here. Might end up having to go through the carburetor, but I'm gonna grab a jumper pack, throw on there, see if I can spin it over a little faster, and if that doesn't work then we'll have to probably dig into the carburetor. And I'll give it one more try. Sometimes these take a long time to get fuel primed up, but I think it should have at least popped or something by now, so we'll have to dig into it a little deeper. I'll give it one more try. I sprayed some gas up in the intake tube. It's not even going for that. I guess we'll check spark quick and see what we got. Got this little spark tester on it. Let's see if we can see any spark. I don't see anything. That would be our issue. I'm not sure what else was taken apart here. It's the wires for the stator here got pulled apart or not. I'm going to do some looking and I'll bring you back with what I find. Well, I found an issue. I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's the issue though. This wire here was disconnected from the coil. So we'll see if we get spark now. No, it's not going off my... I do see spark, it's just not in the tester. It's hard to get these to ever sit somewhere you want them to. There we go. Probably flooded it now, but at least we have a fighting chance now that it's gonna run. Try and get the spark plug wire back in here. There we go. Give her a try again. I'm not gonna choke it this time, so. Just choked off the air there. Not sure why the key switch or the handlebar switch didn't shut it off. We must have something else disconnected. But at least it runs. Now we can continue on. It sounds pretty loud. It's got a gasket down in there on the exhaust that's blown out of there. So I'll bring you back after I do some looking at the wiring and see what's going on. So these two black wires here were disconnected. You can see on the board it says black there, so you know that's where the black wires go if nobody's messed with the coloring, but these ones are still okay. So that worked, but then I tried to restart it again and I couldn't get it to pull any fuel, so it must have been just running on what fuel was in the carburetor. So I did pull the cover back off just to make sure that the flywheel key was still okay, and that was fine. And I started looking at the fuel system. I pulled the fuel pump off from under here. I'll show you how that works when we reassemble it, but I have the pump over here. I pulled it apart. Well, actually it's this one. And this diaphragm, I don't know if you can really tell on camera, it's just all stretched out and sunk down in there, so that wasn't doing anything. So I have this fuel pump here off of a parts machine. We're going to take that one apart and see if that one's any good, because I don't have a rebuild kit for this other one, and I don't really want to spend too much money on this one. If it was a customer's, I would just rebuild the pump probably, but being it's one for me, I don't want to spend too much on it right now. So we'll show you how to take this one apart and put it back together. These middle two screws there are the longer ones, and the rest on this top half are the, I would say, medium length ones, and then there's one short one that goes back over here. I did clean this off a little bit before I take it apart. Any of the fuel stuff you want to try to keep as clean as possible. That diaphragm is not great either, but it's clean in there at least. So we'll see. I'll try this one just to see if it works, but I don't have too much faith in this one. I just dropped the diaphragm on the floor, so that's great. I'll clean that up a little bit. And this can be tricky to get this bottom one off. There's nothing to really pry on. You don't want to jam a screwdriver in there and wrap that other diaphragm. Try tapping on it with a little hammer here. There we go. Grab a rag. Wipe that clean. These can just get junk in there that won't let that diaphragm move. This is a little spring and a plastic piece here. You want to make sure that that is back in there when you go to put it back together. I'm just going to spray out the stuff out of there with some carburetor cleaner and wipe it out. That's not too bad. I don't want to peel this too much and end up wrecking it, so I might just end up leaving it and trying it. It doesn't look too bad underneath there. I'll put that back together like that. Put this diaphragm back in there. It's got those two littler holes in it you can line up with this piece. Like that. It's kind of a puzzle here to hold it all together and make sure that the diaphragms all stay where they should be. Get a couple of screws started and tighten them down so it doesn't fall apart on you while you're putting the rest in. Just remember the middle ones are those longer ones that's what actually mounts it to the four-wheeler, so you don't even really have to put those in until you're mounting it on the four-wheeler. I usually just run them in till they're flush, since they're threaded here, but then a nut goes on the back side to mount it to the four-wheeler, so. And it's not very easy to get in there. This one I think I'm not going to mount it to the four-wheeler yet anyway. I'm just going to test it, so I'm going to run them all the way through. Just let it hang off of them without the nut on there. You'll see what I mean when I get it on the four-wheeler, how hard it is to get to the nut behind them. If you pull the gas tank off, it's not as hard to do. But this pulse line here is what moves that diaphragm back and forth. You can put a line on there and blow in and out on it. If you hear that, that's the working, but I think that diaphragm stretched out too much on this one too. It might not work, but we'll see. You can't see too good in here, but this lower line goes, they pretty much go in order, so the lowest one is here, and then the next one would be here, and the next one is here. So this would be the pulse line. That's fuel, or this here is fuel out to the carburetor. This is fuel in from the tank. So you just want to make sure you kind of follow the lines and know what they do. The one that goes to the upper right hand side of the carburetor would be the pulse line. You want to make sure you don't get this one and this one mixed up, or you'll just flood the engine with fuel. So get those connected up. We'll start with the top one here and go around. Grab a pliers. My phone going on. These clamps. I'll just let it sit in there for now. I didn't mount the nuts yet. These clamps can be tough to get in a tight spot like that. End up using a bunch of different kinds of pliers. Alright, turn the fuel back on. I'll watch this fuel filter here. See if it moves any fuel when we're... Might be too bright. Yeah, you can see quite a bit of fuel moving there. It should be filling up the carburetor now. I have to hook the jumper pack up though. I'm not sure why it's not firing off still. The spark plug wire's down all the way. Get you set up in the stand again. Go from there. It's kind of hard to do everything with one hand. And I primed it a little bit. We'll see if that makes it go. have got it. These can take a long time to prime up, even with a good fuel pump, so we'll see if it'll restart for us again. But for now, I don't want to run it too long. It's low on oil and it's old oil, so I'm probably gonna dump the oil. It's this oil tank under the front fender here. There's just the little plug here. So I'll do that and check the antifreeze and everything, and then button it up enough that we can take it for a test ride and see how it goes. This is just a 9/16 wrench. It looks like we got some water in there. That's not a good sign. Could be just from sitting though. It did sit outside for about 6 months. The furnace just kicked in, so I'll bring you guys back when it's a little less noise pollution in here. I'll put this linkage back in here. I gotta put the footwell back in it, I think, before I can test it, so the fenders don't bang on the tires. You can see that one's pretty close to hitting there, so, and it's hitting on the exhaust up there, so get that footwell put back in there. Hopefully I have all the parts. This is what I got left for parts that were in the bag that came with it, so we'll see. The oil filter for this, I use the high flow oil filters, so it's a HF303. I've had pretty good luck with them. They come with the O-ring has some grease on it already, but I still like to run some oil on there just to make sure. If you ever put them on dry and you go take them off later, you'll know why I do that. They get stuck pretty bad if they go a long time without an oil change too. This one was changed not too long ago, but being that it had that water in there, I want to make sure I get a new fresh filter on there. These bread pans make a pretty good little drain pan for areas like this that are hard to get anything into. I just pick them up at thrift stores, garage sales. That's pretty much all there is to that. This is pretty much done draining. So I'll throw that back in. Left my wrench over here. There's another drain plug on these. That's just the oil tank there. So if you want to do a proper oil change on them, there's another plug right there. It's this one right here. It's not the easiest thing to get at. You kind of got to go up through the bottom like that with a wrench. They're usually not the easiest thing to bust loose either. Most people end up just changing them by the oil tank. Oh, it broke loose. Trouble is getting your fingers in there to get it the rest of the way out. And then you usually get oil all over yourself. Just make sure not to lose the sealing washer off of it too when you pull it out. And it kind of makes a mess, drains all over the skid plate, but there's usually a half a quart or so in the actual engine. So if you just pull that plug on the oil tank, you're leaving that dirty oil in there. This will take about 2 quarts of oil then when you drain it this way. I'll let that drain and then bring you guys back. Now while the oil's draining, we'll evict some of the mouse house out of here. That looks better. When I was looking for wiring issues, I did take this light pod apart. It just has, there's screws here in the front, and then there's 2 on the underside here that go up and through. You need a little short screwdriver to get up through there. And so a lot of people end up taking the back screws out and then they can't get it and they don't realize there's 2 more and end up breaking it off. So I thought I'd point that out. So I snuck a long funnel down through the fender. There's the easiest way to put oil in these. I'm using a 10W40 full synthetic from Mystic. It's a more reasonably priced ATV oil, and I've had good luck with it. So. Dump our 2 quarts in there, and we'll fire it up and check it again. The only bad part about shoving the funnel down through like that is sometimes you make a mess pulling it back up and out of there. I'll just let that drain for a while yet. Once we take it for a test ride, I think all we got left to do is, I did check the antifreeze and that was just a little bit low. Off to top that off and then put the front rack back on. I got this footwell just kind of loosely put back in there. There's bolts that bolt along the back side here of the both front and rear fenders. I gotta put those back on once we test ride it, but I don't like to put stuff together too much until I know for sure that it's gonna run and I don't have to take it back apart. And these bolts are loose. I'll have to tighten those before we take it for a test ride also. Got it pulled outside and ready for its maiden voyage to test it out. It seems to be running pretty good now. It took 2 quarts of oil to fill it up, so just so you know. It's still got that exhaust leak, but get a gasket for that. It runs okay. put it in four-wheel drive, see if the four-wheel drive works at this hill. It doesn't seem to work. Got my helmet with the mount at home today, so I'm trying to do this with riding with one hand. We'll see if we can do this. It's quite the hill climb right here, so. But the four-wheel drive doesn't seem to be working. Probably because of the low battery. These won't. Four-wheel drive won't kick in unless you have 12 volt power. I shut it off out there and then it wouldn't restart. I had to pull start it, so I'm going to check the charging system. We're getting 13 volts, so that should be good. I wonder if this battery's just no good. It's just it says Mighty Max batteries. I've never really heard of that brand, so I don't know if it's any good or not, plus it's been sitting a long time. So maybe let that charge overnight and then we'll test it again. I shut the key off. They're dropping down, but pretty fast actually. I turn the key back on and I don't get any neutral light or anything. I don't know. Still have voltage though. I don't know why I lost everything here. Something might have came disconnected for the charging system, or I mean the key switch. Seems to be all connected. And I don't get a reverse light either. I think it's our handlebar switch there is the culprit, because now it's working. Now the tire's up, so might have to replace that. The speedometer doesn't work. I did notice that the cable was disconnected and was missing, so I'm sure it has a lot more than 1,000 miles on it, but still seems to be a pretty decent machine. I gotta get rid of this key here. When you have the extra key on there, if it's like that, when you turn, it'll, see how I just turned the key off? So these you really can't use that for your key holder. It might work with that one in there and leave the spare out though. It doesn't help you if you lose your key though, and your extra one's right here. Well, that's almost about it for this one. I gotta finish buttoning it up and I'll check the antifreeze one more time. I noticed a bunch of water was coming out of it when I went to back it out. I thought we had a leak, but it was actually just this frame tube right there. Had a bunch of water in it from sitting outside. So I'm kind of lucky that didn't get in there and freeze and break the frame, but everything seems to be okay. I'll get it buttoned up the rest of the way and bring you guys back and show you the final product here. Well, that's gonna do it for this one. Got everything buttoned back up and doesn't look too bad. There's a few little things I still need to fix on it, but all in all, it's a pretty decent runner. Just need to maybe work on the four-wheel drive a little bit. I might do a quick video on how to get the four-wheel drive working on these. Some of them can be pretty finicky, especially if the charging system's not working correctly. But other than that, we'll move on to the next project. If you like this sort of thing, like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.